Okay, you are live and good to go.
Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome.
Okay, good evening, Mount Vernon. This is a meeting of the Mount Vernon 2024 Charter Review Commission. It is 5:07 p.m. This meeting was moved from 6 p.m. to 5 o'clock to accommodate our speaker, who we will hear from later. First, I'm just going to do a quick roll call, recognizing that the moving of this meeting to 5 p.m. Obviously cost us some attendance. People will join as they can. Okay, Kareem Bell, Raquel Bennett, Rosa Blackwell Lawrence,
Present.
myself, Brian Dwyer, Anitra Hadley,
Present.
Mary Kingsley, Eileen Lambert,
Present.
Dolores Lopes,
Present.
Kevin Morrison, Haley Pilgrim, David Rogers,
Present.
Monica Whiting Hogans, Morinike Williams, Gita Morris. For- hey, I didn't see you. Okay. For the advisory board, Axel Iberman,
Present via Zoom.
Michael
Hi,
Justine-
Gita Morris is here.
Gita got you.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Michael Justino, Susan Lawley,
Present.
whoever is not on mute, please go on mute. Erin McGarry, Vince Ferrandino, Gabriel Thompson,
Yeah, I'm here.
Stephen Vasquez, Donna Wimple. Okay. So tonight we have Matt Leininger. Matt, did I just say your last name right?
You did. You did.
Okay. From the National Civic League, who we have heard from before. He actually came here to show us survey capability, and in between that time and now, help design our opening initial survey. There were comments and questions on the survey that, sort of made me think it would be helpful to have him come back and talk about the survey, the usefulness of the survey, and why we would do it. So I'm gonna turn it over to him, after which we can ask questions of him. Okay, thanks,
Awesome.
Matt.
Thank you. And I'm sorry I couldn't about the timing here. Sorry, that makes it difficult for people. But so basically, first, I think that the one key thing to know about this thing is it's intended to be a tool that you can use as part of in-person meetings, and that may be its highest and best use. We've used this sort of thing in a bunch of different places: Mesa, Arizona, Boulder, Colorado, now in Brookings, South Dakota. But basically, giving people like a little bit of kind of through the phone or through whatever laptop or whatever they want to use, you can kind of bring them a little bit of information about your topic and get a little input from them, right? So if you have if you're going to make a presentation about the charter review process to a neighborhood association or a pastor's breakfast or any chamber of commerce meeting or whatever, and they give you 10 minutes on the agenda or whatever, you can say, you can introduce it by giving a little bit of the introduction about who you are, what the commission's all about, say whatever you want to say about the charter, and then ask them to go through this process. So, and so what you've got here is a combination of things. The first thing is to kind of give them a little bit of a refresher on what a charter is. There's the way this would work is as they so you would have a QR code or a link to give them. Either will work, and then this will pop up on their screen of their phone or their device, and it'll ask this question about the charter. Why is the charter important? And it would give them then a link that would go to a web page that says, here's what a charter is. That web page also would have, in addition to a couple of sentences like you see here, you would have we're working on a little explainer video that'll be like a 1 or 2 minute video that tells people more about a charter, so they can get more information that way. But that'll be generic. That's just about city charters in general, not about Mount Vernon in particular. And then the rest of the questions here are questions, a couple of which I think came from surveys you guys have done in the past, that you shared with us, and then a couple that are about kind of what sorts of ways do people want to engage, with their local government. And that reflects kind of the basic idea that the charter is a great tool for kind of reshaping and checking that relationship, making sure people feel like government is responsive to them, it's on their side, it's inviting their participation and engagement in various ways. And those sorts of ideas can be put into the charter. It's a kind of be reaffirming both the general idea of public engagement in government and also kind of putting in place very specific things that people can get involved in. So it goes from the more kind of general sorts of questions in this to the more specific about different sorts of things they might want to see. So all of that is something that you can use as you interact with people in various face-to-face settings over the next 6 months or whatever, as you are kind of gathering input from the community about the charter. It is also something you could send out. You could send a link to this in a newsletter or put a link to it on the city website or whatever else you want to do. So you can kind of sample use it that way as well. But one thing to know, this is the last thing I think I'll say before I take questions, is just that one should understand that this is not a kind of a scientific random sample of the community. This is not one of those sorts of public opinion surveys where you're really trying to get a totally random set of people. This is something that you're using to get the input of the people who are showing up to stuff. They're the people who are coming to the meeting, where you're presenting about the charter. They're the people who are going to the city webpage about the charter. They're people who are paying attention in some way to local affairs. And that, of course, is not necessarily a representative sample of the community. On the other hand, those people's opinions matter. And as kind of in addition to other sorts of ways you might get feedback and other things that you do, I think it'll help. The information you gather through this could be very helpful in figuring out what should go into the charter revision, what you want to put before the council and the public next year. So I'll stop there.
Before we take questions, I just want to correct. So it's not, the questions weren't from surveys that Mount Vernon has done. It was from surveys that other charter commissions have done. So looked at like 30 of those, and they all did some kind of survey on the website or that got shot out into mail. So it was from those, and then from those you picked the 2 that, or however many that you liked. And then before questions, Anitra, did you want to say what you wanted to say about the information that you got, so everyone has that before they ask questions?
Oh, sure. So I was just, thank you for that, Matt. That was a helpful explanation. So I had reached out to the mayor's team to find out if we could get information on like what the response rate typically is for surveys, because there are actually quite a few surveys that Mount Vernon city government does. And so Eric Crump, who is her director of constituent services, provided me with that information. And this is not, I don't know if this comes on the tail of a meeting, in-person meeting. I know it does go out through the city, but there were 2 surveys. There's a cable advisory board public survey, and he said it's been live since February, and it has 68 submissions so far. Just for context, we have about 70,000 folks in Mount Vernon, including children. And he said that there was a community assessment survey from 2023, and they received 66 submissions. And he said all of these were pushed several times on social media, website, mayor's newsletter, public town hall meetings. So yes, during in-person public town hall meetings. And then we did, as a city, we went through like we're still going through a pretty intense comprehensive planning. And it actually was something that came out of the last charter revision. One of the things we put in the charter was to do a comprehensive plan, which the city hadn't done in quite some time, several decades. And so the city right now is currently undergoing a comprehensive planning process that is done in 2 phases. And he said that from that comp plan surveys, the first one, which was open for 6 months, received 480 responses. And the second one, which was open for 3 months, received 180 responses. And I actually took that survey. It was quite detailed. So that is a pretty good number, for people who actually finished those surveys. And he said they were both promoted on social media, website, newsletter, community meetings, and then also they used paid text message blasts. So that's just giving us some context in terms of, what we could expect. And, because those numbers are so different, I think it would be helpful once we have a survey that we all agree on to kind of drill down into what they did for the comp plan to figure out how they were able to get that number of responses.
To get the 480.
480, right, which is incredibly impressive. But Axel was actually involved in it, so I see he has his hand up.
Yeah, comprehensive plan is one thing. They did a pretty decent job, but also before that, there was the Police Reform Commission, and on that one, we actually asked the Police Reform Commission, did the survey and a lot of the outreach, and we had 1,200 responses, if I remember correctly. And then the follow-up, the city did, and I think they had between 400 and 600. So I think part of it is maybe the city not doing such a terribly good job, quite honestly, right? I am on the Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee, and I only got that survey because somebody said, hey, do you know what that is? Meaning the city hadn't even sent the survey to the advisory members of the comprehensive plan, right? So there's a lot of to be left on the table. I think we can definitely do better than that, but it has to be a concerted effort. Yeah, so the highest I've seen so far, we did one that was 1,200 during the Police Reform Commission. And the school district also just did one. There's some stuff going on in the school district. I think the last one they had about 2,000, right? So if you're only getting 68 responses, most probably you're not doing a very good job. Thank you.
Thanks, Axel.
And I also want to say, so just to be clear, maybe they could do better, but just those particular topics are particular interest to folks. So if you look at police reform, that was something that was major in Mount Vernon, and that, had a lot of people that felt very strongly about it. So they got a lot of response. Same thing with the school district. We're in the process of considering school closure. So that got, people are paying attention to that, right, and they're going to get a lot of responses. So I don't know if it's cut and dry as they didn't do a good job or not. I don't know. But I would assume it's also what people are paying attention to and what is affecting them in a moment, which may not be charter revision. But, certainly, something that we could, dig into.
Yeah.
All right.
No, it's true that is something to be aware of. That charter revision, it's those two words are not gonna make people jump up and down. That obviously when I was there, and I think we talked about this to some extent. I think when Doug was there as well. I mean, it's true. There will need to be a good concerted effort, both to kind of get to people and figure out where people are gathered online and off, and get to those spaces. And that's part of the purpose of this tool, is you're giving them something. We're giving you something to kind of bring to those spaces, and then also the language. I mean, it's and kind of explaining to people the charter is the constitution for the city. If you said it that way, it's more exciting about, okay, well, we can really get a lot of things done here and change how we interact, work together as a community, and work together with the city. So that sort of language has to be vigorous and compelling to people. And then you've got to be mapping out the community and thinking about, where are people? Where do we get to them, and who trusts whom? People generally do stuff because somebody that no one trusts already asked them to do so. And that includes a survey like this. So those are all very good, points about this process too.
Any other questions? Axel, your hand is still up. Is that old? Okay.
That is old. I apologize. I'm driving.
All right. Any other questions about the actual survey, the questions on the survey? I did ask Matt to come back and do this after seeing some of the comments on the survey. So are there people who have questions or comments about their own questions or comments?
I'm not sure I'm looking at the most updated survey because there's a lot of crossing out on the one that I'm looking at. I just want to make sure I'm looking at the correct one.
If there's a lot of crossing out on the one, you're probably looking at the one that Anitra amended. So the cross
Yeah.
out for hers. Do you have questions about that, Eileen?
No, I'm just saying, is this the latest and greatest? Like basically there's 5 questions, is that correct?
Say that again? Basically.
There's like it's 7 pages, correct?
I can't remember how many pages it was, but yeah, whatever it came out to be when it was in Word form.
Yeah, six pages. I see 6.
It's
Yeah.
like 3 questions, right? Correct?
It's like what? You're breaking up a little for me?
So the one I'm looking at is 6 pages, but most of the questions have been taken out. There's really only 1, 2 questions and a demographics question. So there's actually 3 on that one.
Right, but the actual survey is the one that you sent is more questions than that.
It's 6. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So
And
go ahead.
no, go ahead. David's got his hand up.
Oh, okay. Tamara, I think it'd be helpful if you pull up the original survey and we can sort of walk through and have people ask questions as they see it.
Let's see.
While you're doing that, just a couple general points. One is certainly the brevity matters. If it's 6 questions, for example, then you're talking about something that's about 60 seconds or 90 seconds for people to do. This one with the possibility of the video, if there's a video in there that they look at, then that, the video, of course, could be a minute or 2. So they got added a minute or 2 to that. You do want it to be relatively brief. But the other overall piece is, in addition to the overall, some kind of more general questions, it's also good to have some more specific things, especially about, well, what do you want to see different? Not just kind of, do you think it's a good relationship or not so good relationship, but what sorts of things would make you feel better and would be productive as far as your relationship with public decision making in the city. So that's the last 1 or 2. And I guess really the last one is the one that's really addressing that kind of need for concreteness.
Okay, I'm just pulling it up and I'm going to share. Can you all see this?
Yes.
Okay, and is it big enough?
It's good.
Okay, so so this is a meeting question that obviously if you were using it to shoot out, we would not use. So the first question, do you know what the city charter is and why it is important? Any questions about this question?
So I know that Axel and I had a different reaction to that question. My suggestion was to eliminate it. And the reason why is because I know people are very hesitant sometimes to fill out these surveys. And if you put a question to start that makes them think, oh, I'm supposed to know this and I don't, then you could lose people there. So I was just trying to say, like I didn't know anything about a charter before I started this process the last go round. So I would assume most people probably don't know a lot about charters because it's not something that generally comes up. Or if they do, fine. But I just thought, there's a potential of losing more than we gain with that question.
That makes total sense. And I think that would be a fine thing to take out. The main reason to have it in the first place was simply to kind of so that you could see trends over time compared to January when you're talking to people versus July. You know, are you getting more responses of people saying, oh yeah, I know what that is? But that's not in itself a huge deal.
And just a suggestion that perhaps if we do want that data to put it at the end of the survey.
Yeah, that true. Yep.
All right, just remember, can we have hands so I can keep track of who's saying what? In which, yeah.
You got a hand there. Rosie.
Oh, okay, Rosa,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I had the same reaction. I didn't think it was a good placement for that question right at the top, but and also because it says, do you know what the city charter is and why it is important? And the answers don't really answer why it is important.
Right.
So it just says, do you know, I have a good understanding. I mean, that's not really answering it. So I didn't think it was a question that could work there.
got it. So Eileen, I see your hand is up. Eileen?
No, similarly, just in the questions that we ask, it's like, what are we using that data for? I think we already have the answer to that, so to speak. We know a lot of people don't have a good understanding of the charter per se. So I think it's making sure we have questions that we need to gather that data for a specific reason to use it in another way.
Yeah, okay, got it. And I don't see any more hands. Oh, Zoom. So I'm just gonna say, if this is just adding on, then let's move on. If this is something new, then that's fine. So Gabriel, with that in mind.
Yeah, wasn't the point that if they answered no, it was going to link them out to a video telling them what a charter is? Didn't he just mention that? Like,
The video would be, right, you could go to the video, yeah, and embedded here.
Yeah, you could make it so that the video is there, and then you don't have to ask or change the order and have it come at the end, or not ask it. I mean, the only reason to ask it is to kind of track your progress as a commission and a city in terms of getting people aware of this. But that's not necessarily the most important thing.
I'm less worried about that. Like,
Yep.
I think you could just as easily put something at the end that says, to
Yep.
learn more about charters, click this and get to a video.
Yep.
So I think that's fine. All
Okay.
right, so I'm gonna move on. In which areas do you feel local government is performing well? I did not see anyone have an issue with that. And so unless there are questions about that, I'm gonna move on to the next one. I don't see hands. Would you be more likely to engage with local government if there were more opportunities for community input? This was one that was crossed out, I believe. So look, the primary, I think I only got notes from 3 people. So I'm going to go back to Anitra because I believe you crossed this out.
I did. So I crossed a lot of them out. So you probably saw that, Matt. But I thought this was, again, like, when we're trying to get people brevity, like you mentioned before, we're trying to get people to answer questions, that we should stick to questions that really we need the information for. If people would be more likely, I mean, that's another one where you could say, well, if I say no, then that makes me a bad person. Like, it's another kind of like judgment question.
Yeah.
And so all of those I would take out. And then anything that, this is going to be the reason why I took everything out, Tamala, is it's just too much, or it's not specific enough to what we're trying to do, the information that we need to gather.
So yeah, I don't agree with that viewpoint. I think to the extent there are things that we can remove to make it more brief, then that's fine. Like, what is a charter? I think we can achieve that again at the end. Do you want to know more about charters? But I think, would you be more likely to engage with government is something that we can impact, in the charter, by strengthening requirements for, how you do public, meetings and things like that. Like if people are feeling that as a pain point, I think that there are ways to address that. And I think it's worth knowing, you know, if we can come to like a perfect number, we know what we think is a perfect number of questions. And this is more for Matt, given, you know, your experience. I think then we can talk about what else would come out, you know, in favor of something else.
Sure, I'm interested to hear what Rosa and Eileen want
I think Eileen went up first. So Eileen.
sorry.
My comment is going to be just in general, again, just about all the questions, just, you know, like when I do this at work, right? A lot of what I would think these answers are, we already have somewhat of the data for. I don't know who would say, no, they don't want to see, like when you think about, would you be more likely to engage with local government if there were more opportunities for community input? I think we kind of know that answer in yes, right? Hence why we even have this commission, hence why we're doing this work, hence like the things that we hear in our community being citizens. So I don't know if we're expecting to get a different answer than what we already know. So my overall comment is about, are these questions going to give us any more information than we already have? So I don't know if it's maybe the way the questions are written or what it's asking for. I just feel like we know the answer to some of this already, hence why we're even a commission.
Right. So I would just say hang on, Rosa, just keep in mind what we want is support for what we're doing. You can think you know the answer to something, but us giving what we think is the answer is not anything in the way of support. So I think that's one answer, but I also want Matt to answer, but let's hear Rosa.
Yeah. Wait, can I just add to that thought? And then it goes back to maybe writing the question differently. What's the question that we ask that garners support versus this yes or no? So maybe it's what type of things would you like to see more of in the community? What's working, what's not working? The open-ended is that's any more data. I'm all about the data. What is the what's the
okay, yep. Rosa?
Yeah, I think one, it's the way, well, one is starting the answers off with a negative. So it's like, no, all right. I've never seen a written like that. I mean, I usually start with yes or something, maybe, and then no. But also it kind of sounds like there was another, because if I'm looking at this as, if I'm a survey, a resident, I'm thinking about, well, did I miss a question somewhere? Because it just jumps to, would you be more likely to engage with local government? Where was the question about, do you engage with local government?
Right.
Along that, it seems like there's something missing, because it makes an assumption already that the person taking a survey, you know, is not likely or is not engaging with local government.
Yeah. We could change the order and have the barriers come first, and that one of the barriers options could be, actually, I do participate all the time, something like that, which is a yes answer there, and then this one could come after it. I mean, I think one reason for this one is that there's a really strong, I find, attitude among a lot of government officials and staff that, you know, if people aren't showing up, that means they're really happy with what we're doing. And sometimes that may be true, and often it's just not true. But and I understand where the attitude, where the kind of the sentiment comes from. You're working hard as an elected official or as staff to like do a good job for your community, and you don't want to feel like, you know, and of course you do get lots of people who complain to you at meetings or, you know, privately or whatever. So you want to kind of feel like the lack of communication in the lack of complaints is a good thing, you know, and maybe it is. And sometimes in some situations, some issues it is, but sometimes it's not. It's simply because people don't know how to engage, or they're frustrated about the opportunities to engage, or they just didn't know they could, or whatever. So it's I think sometimes helpful, especially for people like you guys who are trying to make up an argument, you know, for better engagement, to say that actually people do want more stuff. And then Eileen, I totally agree with you. You also need the stuff that's more specific. Okay, well, all right, yes, okay, but what, you know? And so those ones at the end are more about the what.
Eileen, you have another question?
Yeah, just piggybacking off what you said, we need to ask questions. I go back to these questions have to get to something. I strongly feel quiet doesn't mean everybody's happy. I actually have a differing thought with that. When people are quiet, actually, that's when you should be even more in tune to what's going on. So that doesn't mean people are happy, but I don't think our citizens are quiet either. I think we know the answers to a lot of these. I'm leaning in to say the way we're phrasing these questions, I don't think give us any new data. So we're going to ask to be, our citizens, our fellow citizens we're asking them to answer these questions that I don't know that it tells us a different story than what we already know. So I just want us to think about the questions. That's all.
Totally got that point. And Matt got that point. Okay. What barriers, if any, do you face in participating in local government? I think it's going to be the same comment on a lot of these until you get to the next one that wasn't crossed out. So, Matt, I mean, you hear the sort of criticisms of the questions. I think you understand what they are. Gabriel.
Yeah, I'm confused. What data do we have? I keep hearing like, oh, we already know all this stuff. I don't.
I think I think what Eileen is saying is the questions are kind of obvious. Or the answers to the question would be obvious. Because, right, like, who wouldn't do something if they had more time, And I think what she's looking for is something more specific. I think what you're saying is more the point that I was making. I understand both, though, frankly. And the point that I'm making is, well, we can presume, but we don't really have the information. I don't think that precludes a more specific question. So I understand what you mean. We don't, but
I just when I hear something like, hey, who wouldn't be more engaged if they have time? Actually, a lot of people I talk to and know that answer be they would not, because and then they may write in there they think it's hopeless, and this is all what I hear and over. It's not that I wouldn't because I'm not civic minded, don't want to be involved. Their response is, I've lived here a long time. It's hopeless.
I'm just going to stop because that wouldn't preclude a more specific question with, for example, a write-in.
Exactly, which it has.
So I understand what you're saying, but that write-in doesn't preclude a more specific question.
Or going back to my point, do we make it a right?
Make sure we have hands just so we can keep things under control. But go ahead, Eileen.
No, that's what I think is you're both for making my point. The question needs to care for those things. If you're just asking what I want more of this and you're saying yes or no, then there needs to be something underneath it to say explain further if your answer is no. Right? Something like that.
Totally understand.
Right. But if you
I'm just rushing you guys because I promised Nicole that we wouldn't take forever. Point taken, point understood on both you and Gabriel, and I think Matt got it too.
Yep.
Anyone else? I see nothing. So, I think Matt, go ahead. You want to say something?
Well, I'd say that, certainly people feel free to send, and I guess it would be to you, Tamala, but who will forward it to me, but, happy to take other edits to these or other arguments about particular questions. And obviously it's going to be up to you to ask what you want to ask, but I'm happy to try to kind of massage these to get to better what people want.
I think excellent point. If you have ideas or an example of something that you think is a good question, you should submit it because, the idea is to get these out in January. I don't see putting out a survey with just 2 questions. I think we can come to a reasonable number. Is 60 seconds, short enough to expect people to conduct a survey? Like Matt, you in your your agency's 100 years of experience.
Not my 100 years.
Not yours. I would defer to you on that question. But definitely people should, if you feel like you have something better, submit it. Anitra?
Thank you. So I was just, in terms of getting to which questions we want, I think so like when you say here, Matt, the question about would you like to have more input on budget decisions through processes like participatory budgeting, that's something that maybe you got from the survey that Tamala sent from New York City, because that's something they do in New York City, but we've never done here in Mount Vernon. So that would be a totally foreign question for someone that doesn't interact with New York City or doesn't know about what they do there. And it would be something that would, again, as Eileen has pointed out, would not give us anything that would be particularly helpful here unless we're looking at participatory budgeting, which I don't know that we are. So I guess when I was making what I was trying to do, and I did it very quickly, so I would have to go back and look at it again. But what I was trying to do with my edits is come up with a survey that was, one, shorter, and then two, something that was broad enough that we could get information back from the public about what their particular pain points are. So we do need a more specific question. And I don't know if a write-in is something that people typically do. I tend to think most people wouldn't, but maybe they would. But, we're just trying to get to a sense of like, what are the issues that you have in the city to make sure that what we're thinking we're on the right track with in terms of identifying issues within the charter that we can change, or if there's something we haven't thought of that people have a way of communicating that. But it was just generally to try to get to that point of saying, like, how do we not, introduce new concepts, but like really get from people based on what the information they already have and they already know, and what their issues are. So then we could take those and turn it into or incorporate it into what we're thinking about around ballot initiatives.
Got it. Just a correction, I didn't say anything from New York City. It was
these
little cities all over the United States, and I don't even think that one was mine. I think that
these are based on kind of a national opinion poll I did a couple of years ago, Public Agenda. But basically, it's kind of trying to give people some fairly specific, concrete options. And the hard part there is people don't usually have much experience with different forms of public engagement. They often don't really. It's hard to envision any better relationship with government. Because they're so frustrated often. So giving them some, here's a way to do this in a as pithy a way as you can. Do you want to be involved in budgeting somehow? Through something like PB. That's the intent of these sorts of things, and it gives you something more, concrete and potentially positive. It's a solution of some sort, and these are different types of solutions, and some people like some more than others. So trying to do that and to do it in a way that doesn't say, oh, if you pick this one, the city's automatically going to do it. What you're doing as a charter review commission is testing people's interest in different sorts of things. And then you can explore more of those sorts of things, give them more information about this thing or that. And as the kind of over the 6 months or whatever that you're working on this with the public, you can kind of get more and more toward what people are most interested in. So that's the intent. But there's probably others we could have added, and there's some here that we could take off. But I think it's important to give people both positive, interesting options and to have them be, specific, as opposed to, hey, the city should just communicate better. Well, that doesn't really help you have that much.
Gabriel and then David.
Yeah. So can we all just like send in our questions that we would propose? Ideas we have by like next week or something. I'll send it to Tamala because I have a couple ideas from listening.
Sure.
All right, that's great. David, you're on mute, or I can't hear you.
Sorry, no, that's what I was going to say. Anyone who has additional questions, let's get them in for, let's say, Monday, Tuesday, the latest. And the other piece of this is, do we have any idea at this moment how many surveys we're going to do?
I mean, we had talked about, an opening survey, like the initial temperature taking. NCL would sort of crunch the numbers on that and, and look at what came in, and based on that, like recommend maybe some tweaks. And this would be bringing us into, to the true, like, sort of public engagement. And then, the tweak survey is really the one we would use when we're in the room with people.
Okay, so that sounds like about 3.
I mean, 2 or 3. It may be that we get sufficient information that 3 is not necessary. 2 could be the sweet spot.
Okay. And the reason I'm asking is because if we're building towards something, that's a different set of questions versus we have two opportunities. So let's hit them with what we think we need to learn right now. And then the next survey will be a follow-up to that.
I mean, I think of it, and I think the way, you know, we talked about it, man, even in that first meeting was more of a, you know, building towards something, like building toward, you know, what we would use when we're actually in the room with people, because it had been contemplated that, you know, that wasn't going to be really happening in earnest until, you know, early next year.
Right. So that goes back to my whole thing. It's like, depending on the number of surveys we're going to do determines the, I guess, depth of our questions as we move forward.
I'm gonna run, unfortunately, but I think in terms of as part of the cost side of this, assuming that you're not like doing these by direct mail or things like that, there, you know, you don't have physical costs, or, you know, in that sense. If it's all electronic, and it's easy for us to do. If you have another set, like in 4 months, say you want to ask people more specific questions based on what you heard and what you guys have talked about as a commission, you know, that's if you wanted to do that, it's a possibility. And I'm not saying you should, but that's a possibility.
And no paper.
No paper. Yeah. No, I agree. Don't kill any more trees. Great talking with you. Thank you for your patience with all of this process.
Thank you so much, Matt.
Okay. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right. So like David said, if you guys, you know, you have recommendations for more specific questions, definitely get them into me. David, what did you say? Monday, Tuesday? Tuesday at the latest. What is next week is Christmas, right?
Yes, which is why I'm saying Tuesday the latest.
Right, got it. And you know, and I'll get those to NCL and they can do a reboot of this. All right. I promised Nicole that we would be off. Eileen?
I just clarity. You want us to submit questions for consideration, or do we want to submit questions do like a Google Doc for us all to norm on it and then send it to the consultant? I feel like we all have some differing. I think we all want. There's a few of us who want to add questions. We want one main document.
You can send the questions to me, whatever your questions are. I will put them together in a main document and share with everyone, but you just send them to me as your initial step. Okay. All right. I don't see anything else. So I'm going to let folks go. Nicole, Clerk Bonilla, thank you for
thank you
so much. We're getting off and giving you your line back.
All right, thank you.
Move to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you. All right. Bye, guys.